In the shadowy corridors of a palace that once echoed with the laughter of a queen, a young girl no more than a few days old lay in a cradle, her future as uncertain as the whispers that surrounded her. This was a time when the world was a dangerous place, and the air was thick with the scent of betrayal, ambition, and the cold, calculated moves of a king who would stop at nothing to secure his legacy. The girl, Elizabeth, was born into a storm, the daughter of a woman who had once been the most powerful in the land, but who now faced a fate worse than death. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, had been accused of the most heinous crimes, and within days of Elizabeth's birth, she would be executed. This is the story of how a young girl, labeled as a bastard and scorned by many, rose to become one of the greatest queens in English history. Anne Boleyn was a woman of extraordinary beauty and intelligence, a woman who had captured the heart of King Henry VIII. For years, Henry had been married to Catherine of Aragon, but he desperately wanted a male heir. Catherine had given him a daughter, Mary, but no son. Desperate and determined, Henry began to court Anne, who initially resisted his advances. Her refusal only heightened his desire, and he became obsessed with making her his queen. To achieve this, Henry broke with the Catholic Church, establishing the Church of England, so he could annul his marriage to Catherine and marry Anne. In 1533, Anne was crowned queen, and later that year, she gave birth to Elizabeth. However, Anne's reign as queen was short-lived. Despite her intelligence and charm, she failed to give Henry the son he so desperately wanted. Her enemies, both within and outside the court, began to plot against her. Accusations of adultery, incest, and treason were leveled at her, and in 1536, she was arrested and taken to the Tower of London. The evidence against her was flimsy, but Henry was determined to rid himself of her. On May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn was beheaded, and her daughter, Elizabeth, was declared illegitimate. Elizabeth's early years were marked by uncertainty and danger. After her mother's execution, she was sent to live with her half-sister, Mary, who had been raised as a Catholic and resented her father's decision to break with the Church. Elizabeth was only 2 years old when her father married Jane Seymour, who gave birth to a son, Edward, in 1537. Jane died shortly after the birth, and Elizabeth's status as a princess was further diminished. Over the next few years, Henry married and divorced several more times, each marriage bringing new stepmothers and step-siblings into Elizabeth's life. Despite the constant changes, Elizabeth showed remarkable resilience and intelligence. She was well educated, learning multiple languages and developing a keen interest in literature and politics. When Henry VIII died in 1547, his son Edward VI became king at the age of 9. Edward was a sickly child, and his reign was marked by religious turmoil. The young king, influenced by his advisors, continued his father's work of establishing the Protestant Church of England. This was a difficult time for Elizabeth, who was raised as a Protestant but had to navigate a court where her religious beliefs were often met with suspicion. Despite the challenges, Elizabeth's intelligence and charm won her many supporters, including some of the most powerful men in the kingdom. Edward VI died in 1553, and his half-sister, Mary, ascended to the throne. Mary, a devout Catholic, was determined to return England to the Catholic faith. Her reign was marked by the persecution of Protestants, earning her the nickname Bloody Mary. Many of Elizabeth's friends and supporters were burned at the stake, and Elizabeth herself was under constant suspicion. Mary's marriage to Philip II of Spain, a powerful Catholic monarch, further isolated Elizabeth, who was seen as a threat to Mary's rule. In 1554, Elizabeth was implicated in a plot to overthrow Mary and was imprisoned in the Tower of London. However, she managed to convince Mary of her innocence and was eventually released. When Mary died in 1558, Elizabeth finally ascended to the throne. Her coronation was a moment of triumph, but also of great responsibility. England was divided, economically weak, and facing threats from powerful Catholic nations like Spain and France. Elizabeth's first challenge was to establish her authority and unite the kingdom. She did this by carefully balancing the interests of different factions, and by promoting religious tolerance. While she maintained the Protestant Church of England, she also sought to reduce the harshness of the laws against Catholics, hoping to bring peace and stability to the nation. Elizabeth's reign, known as the Elizabethan era, is often considered a golden age in English history. She supported the arts, patronizing playwrights like William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe, and encouraging exploration and trade. England's navy became one of the strongest in the world, and the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 secured England's position as a major maritime power. Elizabeth's foreign policy was also marked by a series of alliances and negotiations, as she sought to maintain England's independence and security. Elizabeth I never married, choosing instead to remain the Virgin Queen, and focusing her energies on ruling her kingdom. Her reign lasted for over 44 years, during which time England experienced a period of relative peace and prosperity. Elizabeth's leadership and charisma made her one of the most beloved monarchs in English history. She was a master of diplomacy, a patron of the arts, and a symbol of English strength and resilience. When she died in 1603, she left behind a legacy that would endure for centuries. From the cradle to the throne, Elizabeth I's journey was one of triumph over adversity. She faced countless challenges, from the early loss of her mother to the constant threats to her life and throne. Yet, through her intelligence, charm, and unwavering determination, she rose to become one of the greatest queens in English history. Her reign marked a turning point in English history, setting the stage for the modern nation and leaving a legacy that continues to inspire and captivate people around the world. Elizabeth I's story is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, courage and resilience can lead to greatness.